The All About Nothing podcast is proud to support the 2023 Soda City Comic Con. August 19th and 20th, join thousands of fans of fantasy, comics, science fiction, anime, classic games, pinball, and much, much more as they descend upon the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center. 1-day and 2-day tickets are now available for your chance to meet Sean Astin. As well, you can meet actor 90s heartthrob Vanessa Angel. Plus, you'll meet voice actors from your favorite anime series like Attack on Titan, Demon Slayer, One Piece, and many more. Visit theallaboutnothing.com for links to more information and ticket information. The 2023 Soda City Comic Con is a premier pop culture experience in South Carolina. Get your tickets now. Visit theallaboutnothing.com for details.
The All About Nothing podcast may have content and language that is not appropriate for some. Listener discretion is advised. Recorded live from GOT Sound Studio in Lexington, South Carolina. This is the All About Nothing podcast with Barrett Gruber, Trent Clark, me, the most attractive host, Zach King.
All right, welcome to the All About Nothing podcast. I am Barrett Gruber, joined by Zach King. We are Sans.
Trent
wow,
Clark.
Messed that up too. We are Sans Trent Clark this week. This is episode number 168. And I'm going to go through my regular spiel just because that's what I do. I am Barrett Gruber, joined by Zach King, of course. Trent Clark again on vacation again.
Must be nice.
It is nice. It is nice. You know.
Don't ever get that.
Yeah. Do you get to take any vacations? No.
and I need one.
We're in a room. It's a room full of people that can't take vacations. We'll introduce our guest here in just a second. Please subscribe to the show. That's how we get new listeners. Also, please consider supporting us financially by visiting theallaboutnothing.com and becoming an official member and proudly calling yourself a true nothinger. We have a bunch of membership tiers available that give you early access and exclusive content. Also, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts and you think we're worth it, give us a review and drop us 5 stars. And if you're not on Apple, give us a review where you can. Share the episode with your family and friends. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook and interact with us. And you can search for us on the All About Nothing podcast, or you can just visit our website for the links.
Can I take over for a minute, Barrett?
Yeah.
For as little as $1, you too can help the starving children of the All About Nothing podcast. It's as much as a beefy 5-layer burrito at Taco Bell.
Hold on. Just so I know, a beefy 5-layer burrito.
It's like $3.49, but you get the gist. Remember when Taco Bell was cheap? It's like being back there.
After 3 months, Zach can afford a beefy 5-layer burrito.
Until then, Zach won't eat a beefy 5-layer burrito.
All right, so first of all, shout-outs. Jay Jones, president, host of the podcast Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Thank you, Jay, for being with us last week. That was a great episode. Also, thank you for the advice and the conversation. All around, great person. Go back and listen. It's episode number 167. Thank you to Dr. Jamel Brooks and Bill Kimler, who invited Zach and I and Trent out to the Greenwood County Democratic Party August breakfast this past weekend.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got to hang out with our friend Daniel Duncan as well. So It was good seeing Daniel. We also got to meet Michelle Brandt, who is the 3rd vice chair of the Democratic Party for South Carolina. That was a good time.
Amazing woman.
Enjoyed hearing her speak. Also enjoyed meeting several of the patrons that were there that said they listened. So appreciate that. It's easy to say you listen. It's hard to do.
Oh, it showed up, man. We got like at least 10 followers off of that one episode.
I do also want to give a shout out to Polaris Gaming, 2005 Edgefield Street in Greenwood. A lovely young lady walked up and told us that was where that was her business and that she wanted to congratulate us on doing a Dungeons and Dragons episode.
We had wives and children to get home to, so we could not stop by. But I swear to you, when we are back, that will be the first.
Yeah, we'll definitely come out and visit. Also, shout out to the Columbia Fireflies and John Kosis Jr., the broadcast and media relations manager there, for our weekly Firefly update. There's only a few more homestands left in the season, so if you haven't been to a game this year, you definitely want to do that before the season's over. That's all I got.
Those Firefly games are so much fun.
Yeah, it's a good time, and hopefully we're going to see them move into the postseason because their season ends Labor Day weekend. That's it for the season unless they advance. So,
and Labor Day is September 6th,
September 4th.
4th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Our fantasy football draft is the 3rd.
I just don't show up to work and see which day I get yelled at for not being there.
Well, you wouldn't be there on a Monday. All right. So, want to introduce this week's guest. He's a business. He has a business degree after attending Wofford College, Winthrop University, the University of South Carolina. Former board member of the Council on Economic Education. Past president of the Lions Club. I want to ask about that. I'm not sure exactly what the Lions Club does, but I imagine it has something rooted in the community. Also, a member of the Business Association of Columbia for more than 20 years. He has been my home and auto insurance agent for more than 20 years. State Farm insurance agent serving Columbia, West Columbia, Lexington, and all of the areas for more than 30 years, and knows more about economics than all of our past guests combined, and has more than 3,000 graphs and pictures specifically on his cell phone about economics to prove it. Welcome to the All About Nothing podcast, Roe Young. Roe, thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here. Again, I'm Roe Young, and I've had my own State Farm agency for about 34 years now.
Yeah.
And it's an honor for me and my team to be able to help people in the community.
Yeah.
And try to help them transfer risk off of their backs.
Yeah.
And onto us, for a known amount of money, they can transfer that unknown risk to us, and that's a great thing. Yeah. And that is the premise of insurance: is that the risks of the few shared by the many.
Right. Yeah.
And so really like doing that.
No, I have to say you have a great team too, because the young lady that I speak to almost every time that I ever call in or anything. I can't remember her name right off the top of my head.
Sandy, probably.
Potentially, or is there another one?
Lauren?
Yeah, Lauren.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I don't, having you as close to where I live and knowing that I can either stop by the office or just come by. I bought an electric motorcycle. Actually, I bought it 2 years ago. It didn't get delivered until February. And
that's a whole podcast within itself.
And I knew that there were going to be issues because South Carolina didn't have a lot of electric motorcycles in this class. And the fact that you all, Lauren, and the team were able to figure out how to get it insured. And then while we're going through, I was perfectly willing to pay the insurance, but the discounts that I got or that she went through and found for me wound up paying for the insurance on the motorcycle. So
that's beautiful. That's great.
It's fantastic, and I appreciate that, and I know that other insurance agencies offer that.
Oh, sure.
But there's always been a consistency to anything that I needed with State Farm. And I'm not just blabbering about State Farm.
No,
but
I even had a question 34 years ago when you decided to get into this. What made you be an arm of State Farm? Like, what drew you towards that?
That's a great question. My father, Roland Young, was a State Farm agent for almost 40 years.
Wow.
And he was in 5 Points.
Okay.
And he was at 1924 Blossom Street.
Okay.
And I can still remember his phone number.
All that never leaves.
Yeah, so that's how I got into it. And I really wasn't that interested initially. Mm-hmm. I got my business degree, and I was thinking about it, and I kind of already knew the industry and the business at the time, so it was almost a natural progression.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy helping people. I really get it fills my basket, so to speak.
Sure.
Get a kick out of it.
Yeah. If you can make someone's life better, that's
yeah.
That's great.
I totally agree.
And so that's how I got into it, because it was had the business degree, already had the knowledge under my belt, or a lot of the knowledge under my belt. So I just worked to that end, and approximately 34 years ago, I got my own shop.
Okay.
Excellent.
Have you been in that same location for 34 years?
I sure have.
Wow.
Yeah. And when I first was deciding where I would go, there were, I wish I could remember the numbers, but there were just thousands of people in that area.
Sure.
And there wasn't one place that delivered pizza like within a mile or 2 miles or something.
Which is a true tragedy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so when I went in, soon after I went in, McDonald's came in.
Yeah.
A number of these other things came in. I did consider moving to number 6 at Platte Springs,
Okay.
but I was concerned I could not wait for it to develop.
Yeah.
And I would starve to death,
Yeah.
before waiting for this to happen.
Because where you're located now, you're directly behind a KFC. And I don't know how you're as small as you are, because if I was in front of a KFC, I think I'd probably be there 2 or 3 times a week. The McDonald's across the street. There's a Taco Bell across the street. There's a Domino's. So there are 3 pizza places, because I used to, when I first moved here, I worked at the Papa John's delivering pizzas for them, because I wanted to know the area that I lived in.
Right.
Love the pizza.
Oh, yeah, love, hate, because ultimately when you work for a pizza delivery place, whether it's high-end pizza like I used to deliver for in Atlanta, which bougie, would that be am I using that correctly? Yeah, Atlanta proper.
It's bougie pizza.
There is you get accustomed to bringing home pizza and then gaining.
Which now he gets to relive through his stepson.
My son actually he works at the Little Caesars over there next to the Food Lion. So
all the hot and readies Barrett can handle.
I can't handle it anymore. I've asked him to please stop bringing food home. So but yeah, no, it has, that area has grown up. So it's at the corner of Platte Springs and Emmanuel Church is basically right, and you can see Roe's sign hanging right there above there on Platte Springs Road. So,
and I'll tell you this: I have ventured out from State Farm. I grew up first. I was 14 years old, got my learner's permit, and able to drive at night. My parents were State Farm people, and I started with State Farm. Ventured out on my own. Had Geico. Had the General at one point at my lowest time. It all comes back to State Farm. Always the best rates, the friendliest people. And I'm not, and with your office in particular, but State Farm has always been the best.
Well, who's your agent? Do you remember her name?
Shannon Riker.
Yeah. So
It's a great company.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think even prior to my venturing out from under my mother's umbrella, I think my family had been with State Farm for like 60 years before that.
Oh, wow.
I used to be with John Cooper. Nothing against John Cooper. I just found another agent.
Yeah. So we had you on because we wanted to discuss insurance as well as economics and that sort of thing, because you have flooded me with information about economics that I had never considered. So I do want to get into that. But what's the basic premise of insurance? What's the basic need?
So it's just the unknown risk.
Yeah.
And that can be expressed and articulated a number of ways. The risk of early death, the risk of becoming disabled, the risk of driving a vehicle that can do incredible damage to property and most particularly people.
Yeah.
Those are some of the largest. Your home, with a house comes a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Without insurance, you would be forced to pay cash for a car.
Right.
You would be forced to pay cash for a home. And again, by transferring that risk on someone else's back for a known amount of money, someone would be willing to loan you money to buy that car, to buy that house. And so I think a lot of things that insurance does is absolutely taken for granted and not considered often. People take the position, well, I have to have insurance.
Yeah.
But, really you don't have to have insurance. But if you don't, a lot of other things are going to happen that may not be as desirable as if you do have insurance.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I always thought, having insurance was one of those things that I would never use, but always had to pay for, right? Especially when it comes to vehicle insurance. And then I ended up having an accident happen to me where they paid my car off. They paid the car off that wrecked into me. And I ended up being able to get a new vehicle. Without that, I would have been done for. Everything.
Right.
I have not, knock on wood, I have not been involved in a collision since I was 18 years old. And the vehicle that I hit with my vehicle wound up not sustaining much damage. It totaled my car. And my car was a piece of junk. I bought it when I was 16, and then it was. But
you were lucky it didn't catch fire or going where you were going.
It was a Pontiac, so yeah, I was very fortunate that it didn't just burst into flames while I hit the gas pedal. But but so thankfully I have not been in any incidents. I haven't gotten a speeding ticket since I was 22 years old, I think. Like these are all things that I base my luck on the fact that I'm also a fairly studious driver.
Hey, I've been in an accident, but I've never had a ticket in my life.
Yeah, no,
That's good.
I will say this. So just literally today, I drove out to 6 and 20, and I stopped and grabbed Taco Bell actually on the way home because
I too had Taco Bell.
a bean burrito is. Oh, yeah. I think I could have recognized the earlier. He fumigated the studio for us. But I was driving home, and I'm at the corner of Emmanuel Church and Two Notch Road. And as I'm sitting there, the light turns green, and I look up, and of course I do what I always do, which is I look at the intersection that was just turned red, and I make sure there's nobody like trying to cut a red light. And as I start going forward, I hear a bang, and I turn over my left shoulder, and a woman has literally driven into a tree in front of that gas station that's right there in front of it. And I'm dumbfounded as to how something like that could happen because I saw her sitting at the red light. You never seen those
trees jump out in front of you?
Not once. Okay. But she drove and then went right into a tree, and she couldn't have hit it at more than 15, 20 miles an hour, but like the front end was completely crumpled in.
It's enough.
Yeah. And I try to figure out what could potentially cause something like that to happen. And then I thought about it. I was like, I'm pretty sure that in my observation of her sitting across from me, she was playing with her phone. Light turns green. She presses the gas and is playing with her phone, and then veers off to the right into a tree.
That's a real problem.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Those things just don't thankfully I put you rode with me this weekend. I put my phone up on this thing.
Afraid for my life.
It's not that bad.
It's not that. It's just that his shifting is appalling.
Look, you are not going to find a 2005 Honda Element that still has a stick shift. There are very few of them out there.
That's Barrett's claim to rarity.
Yeah, that's right. And that car will drive me 1,000,000 miles, I promise. How is it that insurance companies actually make money? Because ultimately they take in a premium, but then if insurance pays out on an accident, they're paying out more than potentially what somebody's already put into the system.
By many magnitudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, often. And that's a great question. The way insurance companies make money, and I think a lot of people, this will be surprising, is often they do not make money by selling insurance. Because of market pressures, often the amount they charge for your premium, and in this example, I'm using automobile insurance.
Sure.
Okay? So what they often do is, because of market pressure, they will charge less for the premium than they actually need to. So there's a built-in loss. Okay. So they may not charge a rate that's actuarially sound. And so what they'll do is they may be set up to lose 2 or 3%.
Okay.
Okay. But what they'll do is they get it back, hopefully, from their investments. So they have a pool of money.
Okay.
And they try to grow that. And they try to grow that very conservatively.
Sure.
Because it's a lot of it's not their money.
Volatility.
Yeah, they got to be very careful with it. And so you won't hear this in the media very much, but insurance companies sometimes lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
Sometimes companies have paid out $5 billion more than they took in premiums.
Sure.
In a year.
Wow.
$17 billion more than they took in premiums in a year.
Yeah.
And the general consumers would not realize that or know that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is very difficult to make a profit because prices often form first.
Okay.
Out of voluntary exchange.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's difficult to know what that looks like when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
Sure.
And just to drive this point home, when you go to the gas station and you buy gas, you're really not buying it from the producer.
Right.
You're buying it from the market.
Yep.
you're buying it from the guy next to you at the pump.
Who had already paid for it.
Right, because if someone's willing to pay X number of dollars and they're going to fill their tank up, lickety split and not worry about it, and another person doesn't want to pay quite that amount, they're going to either reduce their consumption of gas or they're going to find some alternative, and so what we're really doing is we're buying away something from someone else because you're buying it in the market, not from the producer.
Sure.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense.
So then I guess the follow-up to that would be like, we're in hurricane season now. And from what it sounds like between the NOAA and the Colorado State, they have decided that they're going to really up the number of potential storms that could come in. And a hurricane hitting South Carolina potentially devastates a swath across. And I can only imagine then in that situation that insurance agencies that cover people's property, they would take a huge hit from that.
Yeah, huge hit. One thing that State Farm does, and I can't speak about other companies.
Sure.
Yeah, because it would be irresponsible for me to do that because I don't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
Right.
But I suspect they do the same thing. When we have a large hurricane that's coming in, we have people that literally follow the hurricane.
Yeah.
They have entire hotel floors rented out,
Makes sense.
and they follow the hurricane, and when it hits, then they can try to put people back.
Yeah.
And so they do a lot to try to be able to act as close as they can to the moment they need to act.
Yeah.
In a meaningful way.
Yeah.
And it's pretty neat to watch.
It's almost the way FEMA used to operate.
Yeah, it's fun.
I was just thinking, I was like, man, I want to do that job.
I've got a friend that works for State Farm in Florida that he's on one of those emergency response teams that literally when even when they get the forecast that there's going to be flooding rains, they literally park themselves and wait for it to rain. And then if it doesn't rain, then it's a sigh of relief that's just the cost of business. But then when there is, and it's not only just making sure people are set and that they know what the next steps are to get themselves back to the normalcy, but it's also the fact that I've seen those State Farm and other insurances as well, but I've seen those trucks, I've seen those buses where they have completely liquidated like an entire Walmart of drinking water and paper towels and things like that to try and get people at least to a state of comfort. It used to be that FEMA would pay for generators.
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore because thank you, Florida. But they will set up shelters where people can drop off food if they have it, and then people can pick up food and things like that. That is one of those social, and I know that it's part of the capitalism, but I recognize that that's one of those social structures that we still need to support people when they need, and I'm I have no issue. My insurance doesn't cost very much. It's I really appreciate it. But I know that I hear people complain about the prices of insurance or how much they're paying, and I see TikTok videos of people talking about the cheaper insurances that you can get places and things like that. But I guess I've always come back to when I see things like that. But what is the quality that you're getting? What is the actual service that you're getting? So when it comes to auto insurance, I think one of my biggest questions has always been, and I understand it from an aspect, comprehensive versus liability. Comprehensive is the vehicle is covered in case of an accident.
Theft, fire, vandalism.
Okay.
Acts of God, act of nature.
Okay. And then liability, I'm just covering to fix the damage I caused, right?
Correct. You're legally liable for something.
Okay.
And it cleans up your damage.
So I always broke it down to comprehensive if you owe money on the vehicle. And liability if like you're being cheap and you're like, if I get in a wreck, I at least have to be covered for that.
Yeah.
I'll take the walking.
I have a 2005 Element that's been paid off for more than 15 years. I only carry liability on it.
That's not unwise.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
good.
yeah.
Good.
No.
But after having comprehensive come through for me in an accident, I'm like, I really liked having another vehicle, like getting enough for what I've paid off to have another vehicle come to me.
Yeah.
Let me give a pointer.
Sure.
In the state of South Carolina, there's a zero deductible for glass breakage under comprehensive.
Yeah.
So, if one were to have an older car like I have and not want to carry collision, they may want to get comprehensive with a very, very high deductible
Okay.
and pay little for it. And then if they get a broken windshield, it's zero deductible in the state of South Carolina.
That's amazing.
So they can take advantage of that.
Okay.
And there's nothing inappropriate.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah, because you're paying so much less for such a high deductible.
right.
Yeah.
And
at the end of the day,
you're not doing anything that's inappropriate.
That's very wise. Yeah.
I may have to call the office tomorrow.
Yeah.
I have a little nick. Oh, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, that's like your deductible may end up you're paying $5,000 out of your pocket if it ends up happening. Consider having a lower deductible. Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah. It's had a good life. I think it's almost 300,000 miles. I think it's had a good life.
Yeah, fire would improve your element. I'm just kidding. Go ahead and get that comprehensive.
Let me information something
Yeah,
interesting
of course.
too. With you brought up FEMA.
Yeah.
Okay, one thing I find very interesting is that prior to the federal flood program, banks and mortgage providers would not loan money to anyone if they were going to build a structure or a home in a flood zone.
Sure.
Right.
So when the government came along and created the National Flood Program, what they did is they incentivized people to build
Outside.
in the flood zone.
In the flood zone.
Because now that risk is transferred to
the government.
Yeah, and
Federal
see,
government.
this is the issue with some of this, is that the federal government often does not charge a premium that would be actuarially sound. So this is, in economics, market failure happens when someone gets a benefit, but the cost of the benefit is larger than the benefit itself. The special interest gets the smaller benefit, and the larger cost is passed on to others,
Yeah.
and everyone is worse off on net.
Okay.
So things are a little better now because because the private market has offered some of these things.
Yeah.
Sure.
But when it was just the federal government, it really incentivized people to build in the flood zones.
Sure.
And that was unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I have to assume their intentions were good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, growth, population
Yeah,
growth.
sure. Helping they're helping people out, and
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
so,
you want to move back into the fourth quarter, the fourth ward or whatever in Louisiana. You're right in it.
Yeah.
That's provingly already back in.
Well, and it's a high population area that's in need of land.
and it's a soup bowl.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
It is. It's like a soup bowl.
You're absolutely in it.
Just purely out of curiosity, 2015 when we had the 1,000-year flood that we had, what was the how much impact did you see for homeowners here in our area?
It was bad, and that's a great question.
Yeah.
I saw things I've never seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
I had a client that had a very large garage, and it was maybe it would be maybe a 2-story garage.
Wow. Yeah.
His family was fairly affluent, and he had this big, gorgeous house. And I have pictures somewhere of the water almost covering the garage.
That. Wow.
So you can only see like maybe 3 feet of the garage.
Goodness.
Well, I mean, it's terrifying. It's hard to.
Absolutely.
It's hard to even fathom.
Yeah.
That we would have that here.
Yeah.
But one dam breaks, the other dams break. And it's just it was an incredible mess, and it was incredible to see. I mean, it just
absolutely
mind blowing.
I assume that there's being a State Farm agent, that there's communication about forecasting and things like that, as far as the potential for and how we're going to handle situations like what happened. And climate change, is that something that you hear about pretty consistently, or?
Some,
Okay.
not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot. One thing too I want to add on flood is if the flood coverage, people have to remember, it normally doesn't pay 100% of your loss.
Right.
So it's limited depending upon what you do and who you go with, and so it's important to remember that you can have some water loss, groundwater. Okay, groundwater is normally not covered by your homeowner's policy.
Okay.
Okay. So it's important to understand. They'll say, well, it's not covered by your homeowner's policy, but then there's a definition of what a flood is.
Okay.
So you have to also meet the definition of what a flood is.
Okay.
So it can be
a lot of water is different than a flood.
Right.
Yeah.
It can be very frustrating because you want to recover from a loss. And it's well known that regular homeowner's policy simply does not cover flood.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't. But then once you have what appears to be a flood, so many acres have to be involved.
Right.
So many houses have to be involved, before the definition of a flood is met.
Yeah.
So for some people, I can see being very frustrating.
What about earthquakes in South Carolina? Because I think I read a statistic from the national the geological survey that they said that South Carolina. So we were it felt really active like a year ago.
Right.
I remember there was one earthquake that it occurred in Elgin, and that's where most of the ones that have been happening around here, which is a good 30 miles from us. Mm-hmm. But I remember it was about 2:00 in the afternoon, and all of a sudden it was a rumbling as though there was an airplane flying very low over the house. And what was crazy about that earthquake was I could feel it go from one side of the house all the way to the other till it passed. So just to go back, so the National Geological Survey has said that South Carolina this year has been more active with earthquakes as a state than it was even during the height of the earthquakes that we were getting back there in Elgin. Has that been something that people have been concerned about?
That's true. There has been a greater concern. More people are asking about earthquake insurance. Earthquake insurance is normally relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of like buying volcano insurance in South Carolina.
No, I wish it were. No, it's we have a lot of activity. I think probably one of the largest earthquakes in North America probably happened through here.
Yeah.
On the way towards Charleston, Somerville, that area. And I get a sense too with earthquake that it seems a bit like flood insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about earth movement, ground movement now. And so a homeowner's policy does not cover ground movement. And so it wouldn't cover earthquake.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have a earthquake endorsement normally on your policy. But then once again, you have to meet the definition of what an earthquake actually is. And so, it's wise to have it, but that's a personal decision. People have to weigh and measure and see what they believe to be their best alternative. Through my life, I normally have carried earthquake because I could imagine having a home that is destroyed and you've got a mortgage on it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Is something that's standard in a homeowner's policy things like trees falling on your house or another person's house?
Okay, great. That's a great question. And this is helpful to people.
Yeah.
What you just said is going to open up some things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you have a home and you have homeowners insurance, okay, and there are different kinds of homeowners insurance, but by and large, if a tree falls on your home and the tree is on your property, that would be covered under your homeowner's policy. Right. So you would have your deductible, and then once you got the deductible out of the way, then your policy would pay.
Right.
So if the neighbor's tree falls on your home and it is a healthy tree, okay, there's nothing wrong with it, blows over, damages your home, once again, your homeowner's policy would pay for that. If the neighbor's tree is diseased, Okay, see, we're starting to get into a liability situation now.
Gotcha.
If the diseased tree falls on your home, then their liability insurance should pick that up.
Okay.
And remember, with liability, there's zero deductible.
Gotcha.
So hopefully you're on good terms with your neighbor.
And that would be vice versa, basically.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be accommodating, and you know, and if I could cover someone's loss,
Yeah.
no deductible, why in the world would you not?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, all right, that's what you do.
I'm here to help.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right.
No, that makes sense. So that's one of the things. So of course, where I live is mostly sand. You have to go down a good 7 or 8 feet before you hit any sort of substantial clay to root things. So, you know, we had a decent number of pine trees in my backyard, and my only gripe was the pine straw. But you drive around sometimes around this area and you see the number of trees that have been affected by the pine borer beetle, and it's like, well, they could take my trees at any time. There's nothing really to stop them. So we decided to have them cut down because the potential, they could have reached the house. They could have, and then, you know, and ultimately I don't want to have to go through the hassle of having to get that work done, fixed, that sort of thing. It's, you know, so it was one of those preventative things that I felt like was a good idea to prevent the headache of what I'm going through. But I have to assume that with my State Farm agent that he would take away a lot of that headache.
But you're wise to do that.
Yeah.
And let me share this with the trees also, is that just because you have a diseased tree, that's a potential loss. It's not a loss.
Yeah.
And insurance does not pay for potential losses.
Okay.
It pays for losses.
Right.
So that is why your insurance company is not going to come out and say, oh, that tree may fall in the next 10 years. You know, they would not do that and then remove the tree.
Yeah.
So until you actually have a loss, then you can't engage your insurance policy.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I didn't know about, I know Zach probably understands this, but what does an underwriter do?
That's a great question. Okay, so underwriters, and we're talking in the insurance industry,
Yeah.
they underwrite risk. So what they're doing is they're looking at risk, and
Same thing as filling out like an evidence assurability.
Sure. Whatever that is.
so what they're doing is they're assessing risk, and they're underwriting. And when you say underwriter, basically what people in general mean is that a policy's taken, okay, written, and it goes to an underwriter. And what the underwriter does is they look at it for completeness.
Okay.
They look at it to make sure all the information is there. And insurance companies have models that they use to determine risk.
Okay.
And it's really stunning now with data. They may look at over 200 or 300 different variables, okay, with the model to determine what the risk level would be.
Okay.
And this is one reason that it's very difficult today to say one insurance company is more expensive than another insurance company. Sometimes that's true, but more often than not, it's that this individual is more expensive.
Gotcha.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. That would be, in automotive terms, if you own a red car with 2 doors that's convertible and a V8 engine, even things like being a red car, wouldn't that be something
that
I've always heard that.
That's a myth.
It's a myth.
It's a myth.
Okay.
So what they would look at is they would look at, for comprehensive collision, they would look at the value of the vehicle.
Okay.
Okay. That's really the big things they would look at. And then they look at your habits. Okay. And some insurance companies look at your credit history. And that's pretty common. But the insurance companies that I'm familiar with, they don't look at medical issues, things of that nature, medical payments you didn't pay off, or what they try to see is if you make an agreement with someone, do you live up to it? So some of those are the kind of the things they look at.
Sure.
So it's not based on like a FICO score.
Yeah.
It's very specific, and they're very specific things that go into making up these models, and they're very sophisticated. I mean, I think the models are maybe over 90% predictive.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah,
That's
Impressive.
right.
That's actually a little scary.
It is scary. and your driving history, it may be like 50 or 60% predictive, something on that order.
Yeah.
I mean, now you even have the technology to plug a thing into the OBD2 sensor and track how someone drives their car.
Right, and that's a great point, actually. Okay, so this is a good segue into this. So a lot of insurance companies have been using credit or pieces of credit to determine risk, to help determine risk. So some governmental bodies are pushing away from that.
Okay.
And in my opinion, that is why you see things like the drive safe and save, where you put a little gizmo in your car.
Yeah.
Because they have to have data to assess risk. And if they're going to be pushed away from getting enough data in a meaningful way, they're going to change the way they gather data.
Yeah.
And I this is just my view, but I suspect that a lot of these things that companies are doing, where they put a little gizmo in your car, it's in your cell phone. I mean, you even get a report card,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it tells you, you're braking too hard, you're turning too fast, and a lot of that is just advisory. So a lot of that does not impact your insurance premiums. They're just trying to help you out.
And that has to be the thing too. When you get in an accident, if State Farm's able to plug that into your OBD2 and pull that information, you accelerated this. Well, then law enforcement could tell that too, and then you could determine who was more at fault for what you did your actions at the time of the incident.
That's a great point. But insurance-wise, I don't think our loyalties would be with
the policyholder.
right, and not the
Yeah. It's just something I've always thought about.
Right.
If your insurance company can read it,
right.
someone else that can read
Right,
it.
Or they could subpoena it.
Yeah,
I
they'd
guess.
have to subpoena it or something.
Yeah.
Well, and
I can see it in the fatality or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And actually, to kind of adjacent to that, I think I saw somewhere that almost 70% of all traffic intersections that have traffic lights now actually have cameras. And
Not here.
no, you don't see them.
Really?
Yeah, they are apparent. It may not be here yet, but across the country, it's something like 70% have cameras, and they can some of these cameras are so good that they can identify your eye color through your windshield.
70% out of 365 million people.
70% of the traffic intersections with lights.
That's impressive.
That was what it was.
Yeah,
but
that's impressive.
but essentially like that. The need for forensic collision specialists. I think
That's why I wear baklava and sunglasses.
But they said that all of these cameras at intersections now have almost eliminated the need to have a forensic collision specialist on staff for most police departments and law enforcement, because they just pull up the view of the incident and they can see exactly what happened. They can tell.
The worst part of me getting in an accident was the 3 cops who came and looking at my Charger going like, it's totaled. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Look at the daggum journey that hit me. I know, I get it.
So I wanted to move into economics some.
Sure.
But before I did that,
I hate that.
Yeah. No, you have a long history with economics.
I guess we need to take a break real quick.
Well, I was just going to cut in the middle of the show somewhere and just throw my stuff in.
We should take a break real quick.
All right, we'll take a break real quick. We're going to take a break and then we'll come back. All right, this is the All About Nothing podcast.
Hey, this is Jenny from Athens, Georgia, and you're listening to the All About Nothing podcast with Barrett, Zach, and Trent.
All right, welcome back to the All About Nothing podcast. Zach King, Barrett Gruber. We are joined by my insurance agent, Roe Young, representing State Farm. Been an insurance agent for State Farm for 34 years. And
not to make you feel old, Roe, but I was 1 when you started.
Well, I'll always be young, won't I? Roe Young.
Barrett was 45.
Right.
Barrett was 45 when you started.
Yeah. Oh, I wish.
Wow.
No, I wasn't. No, I think.
I know.
Yeah, I was gonna say you insured me when I was 22. I think.
Woof.
Yeah. Zach. Thanks for being here, Zach. Always a pleasure.
Always got to pick on you.
Yeah. So I wanted to move into economics
Sure.
because that seems to be your passion, and you went to school for it, right?
Well, some.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of work on my own. Some of the, like Austrian school, it's harder to learn the Austrian school because not a lot of places teach it.
Okay.
And I can compare and contrast some of the different schools and explain to you why I think, and this may be too heavy for, but
We like to think that our listeners are highly educated.
no, I'm sure they are.
IQ's somewhere in the 130 range.
But it's such a foreign thing
yeah.
that people may not have an interest. You know?
Yeah.
So that would be the issue.
Yeah.
It's
I guess the first question I want to ask about economics is how is the country doing right? How is the United States doing right now, just from your opinion and your experience and knowledge about economics?
So
I know that's a very broad.
yeah, and I can kind of help with a little bit.
Okay.
So the centerpiece of the Austrian school is it's capital based macroeconomics.
Okay.
The most developed and refined part of that is the Austrian business cycle theory. And so what we see is a cycle. And we believe, and a lot of people believe, even not just Austrians, that the Federal Reserve has a great deal to do with what goes on in the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not like politics. Politicians are self-interested actors.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And we're all self-interested actors.
Oh, totally.
So, but I don't know what they're going to do. I can't tell what they're going to do. I don't know if they're telling me the truth. I don't
Yeah.
know if they're telling me that it's not the truth. But I kind of understand economics a little.
And with it being a cyclical map per se, you should be able to make some sort of prediction outside.
Right.
Outside of politics.
Exactly.
Right.
And so the politicians, they say all these things, but a lot of it's just not true.
Yeah.
And on both sides. So what the Federal Reserve does is they goose the economy. I'll give you an example. Okay, one politician will blame the other politician
Yep.
for inflation. Okay, of course, it's got nothing to do with the Federal Reserve increasing M2, which is money supply,
Yep.
by over 25% in a very, very short time. Right?
Okay.
Got nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
So what happens when they do that is when money is injected into the economy, it stimulates the late stages of production
Okay.
that are close in temporal proximity to consumable outputs.
Okay. Mhm.
So it stimulates consumption. People go out and buy, and they're consuming. And there are a number of issues with this. One, there's not anything more to buy. The magic pieces of paper don't magically make cars appear,
Right.
food appear. You can't print your food. And today, when we talk about printing, they don't actually mean printing. That's just a word that's used. It's electronic ledger entry
Yeah.
at the Federal Reserve. So you have this stimulation of the economy. People are consuming. And you also have the interest rate effect.
Mm-hmm.
So when they pour money into the economy, because there's more money, supply and demand, interest rates drop.
Mm-hmm.
So as interest rates drop, you have the interest rate effect. So in the earlier stages of production, okay, that are much more remote from consumable outputs, you have, and early stages of production would be like mining, research, and development, things of that nature.
Sure. Yeah.
So what happens is that entrepreneurs, investors now, in the early stages of production, they will borrow more money than they would normally borrow. They will have projects that last much longer than they would normally run because now they appear to be profitable.
Okay.
Okay. So what you have is you have resources, and what's happening is the there's a skewing of the stages of production. So resources go to the late stages, resources go to the early stages of production, the center stages of production thin out.
Okay.
Okay. And so in the Austrian lens, this is one of the ways that we enter a recession.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a steady flow of resources through all the stages of production. Okay. And so that's a big issue. And you can really get a sense of this. So in a simple way, what's the Federal Reserve doing now trying to fix the economy?
Raising interest rates.
They're sucking money out of the economy.
Yeah.
Which raises interest rates.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely correct. So what they're doing is they're undoing what they did.
Back during COVID.
Right. And so the politicians are saying, "Oh, look at my economy."
Yeah.
Well, it's not your economy.
Yeah.
Okay. It's gonna run without you. Mm-hmm. And the Federal Reserve is probably has the biggest impact. And when it comes to inflation, if the Federal Reserve, with government deficit spending, if they fund it by the Federal Reserve selling bonds and people buying those bonds, okay, and then they get the money and they fund the deficit that way, that is not inflationary in nature.
Okay.
Particularly, okay? Because what they're doing is they're sucking money out of the economy.
Right.
So would you say that the economy, the reserve, is autonomous really compared to political input for it?
I couldn't imagine that to be true.
Okay.
Okay, now, I suspect they strive to do that.
Mm.
I think presidents will often approach the Federal Reserve and ask them to goose the economy.
Is that like your stimulus checks to a degree?
That was. Yeah, okay. And what you'll see is that, again, if they're funding that through selling bonds just into the market, that's not inflationary.
Right.
But this is what's inflationary. When the Federal Reserve wants to goose the economy, okay, and the Federal Reserve creates bonds, and then they're buying their own bonds.
Uh-huh.
That's what is inflationary.
Okay.
Because they're putting money directly into the economy. And the way it gets there, it gets into the economy through the credit markets.
Right.
Okay? So you have loanable funds market.
Yeah.
And so it ends up in the loanable funds market. And part of the issue with that is that money coming from the Federal Reserve that ends up in the loanable funds market does not represent savings in the real sense that someone gave up consumption.
Mm-hmm.
With me?
Yep.
So when you save money, or individuals save money, and it's in the bank or it's invested, that savings is savings in the real sense that there was not consumption. So what that means is there are resources available, real resources elsewhere in the economy to be consumed. Okay, and can you see that? You can see the difference there,
and they're just not getting consumed because people aren't spending the money.
Right, and it's there. So you can see the problem with I call it funny money because consumption isn't stopped.
Yeah,
but you're not making any more things.
Right.
So it can be a real problem.
And I don't want to derail anything because I come from Chapin, South Carolina, where my economics was taught by my football coach. Yeah. So it's not the clearest, best picture ever painted. He's just like, I think money. Yeah. So that's the whole time what we did. What is something that crypto in general, is that for you a taboo thing? Is that the funniest of the monies?
Well, I think one of the questions people ask, okay, I like alternate forms of currency, and the one particular is Bitcoin. And the biggest question people ask me about Bitcoin, and I think it's the biggest question people have about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, is why does it have value? And I think the answer is precisely the ability to be able to bundle up immutable packages of data and information and transfer them geographically on a non-contiguous basis to anyone on Earth for a very small fee. And all of that wrapped into a final payment system. So Bitcoin was kind of the first on the block.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it functions. And one issue with Bitcoin is that, one, it's young. Cryptocurrency is young, but it was appreciating so quickly that people kind of stopped using it as in the role of exchange. The role of exchange.
Yeah.
And I would. There were nights I couldn't sleep because I would get up and it's gone up so much in such a short period of time that I'm like, this is manna from heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 0.1% tied up in offshore accounts.
Yeah.
We had someone donate to the podcast 0.1 Bitcoin.
Right.
And this was about what,
$3,000?
6 months ago?
Yeah.
And at the time it was about $3,000.
Right.
Which I cannot get my hands on because it is in an offshore exchange that requires a premium payment to get to the account.
Right.
And then it requires insurance because it's an offshore exchange, and the United States has laws in place to prevent basically they have laws in place to prevent it from being like money laundering and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So it sits, and I look at it from time to time. It goes up and it goes down a little bit. At one point it was up to like $4,000 and then it's down to like 2,700. Right. So I just go out there and look at it and be like, well, one day, maybe.
Yeah. And the thing about it is a lot of it's just supply and demand. Meme coins.
Yeah, like the laughing monkey thing.
That does not interest me.
Yeah.
And I think it's ridiculously volatile.
What do they what do they call those NFTs, right?
Yeah, non-fungible tokens.
Yeah. And with Bitcoin, remember, there's more going on with Bitcoin than most people realize. Okay, you could actually have a Bitcoin IRA.
Really?
Yeah. So you could have a Bitcoin IRA. Some people want to accept Bitcoin and will. Some places in the nation, there are Bitcoin ATMs.
Yeah.
So I think as it matures, if the federal government doesn't put it down, we'll see bigger and better things from it. I do fear the federal government getting involved in digital currency.
That's a big thing. Yeah.
And my fear would be a mistake on their part, or someone just decides they don't like you.
Oh yeah.
And you go to buy food, and you pull out your card, and they say, "Gee, I'm sorry, there's no credit on your card, but you've got your life savings on the card."
Yeah.
But somebody just cut you off.
That's like the truckers in Canada. That Canada suspended anyone who contributed to that campaign of those truckers funded them. They froze all of their accounts.
Right. Yeah, that kind of thing really concerns me. Because,
that's not freedom.
Because, again, governments are self-interested, and you may like who's in office now. Next go around, you may be terrified by the person who's in office.
We've been there.
So I think that the best thing to do is, if you're fearful that the torch will be passed, Milton Friedman had a quote that the centralization, the concentration of power does not become passive or no longer dangerous or dangerous by the good intentions of those that started.
Right. Yeah.
So, I kind of think that I'm for limited government because I want everyone's rights protected.
Yeah.
And this is a personal value judgment thing. This
Sure,
is,
yeah.
But I believe that all human interaction requires consent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Check
Absolutely.
all government overreach is a problem that none of us want to have to deal with. And no, I'm right there with you. And this has definitely been insightful because, like I said, I come from a place where economics was not forefront. They were like, the football teacher will teach.
Oh, my baseball coach taught us AP history and AP U.S. history, so that was,
Yeah, and he's like, most of our curriculum is World War II because I sit on the recliner and watch that. Ken Burns is a fantastic man.
But I will point this out that my AP U.S. history teacher and AP world history teacher was a member of the U.S. Air Force in England for almost 30 years of his career, and was worked alongside the RAF and whatnot. So
he's like, I've seen some stuff.
Yeah. So there was validity to him being that teacher. But Yeah, no, I think I had read at one point. I've read several articles where there was discussions of the United States Treasury potentially being involved in some sort of a cryptocurrency, whether it was a U.S. Bitcoin or a U.S. dollar Bitcoin that they can control. But that scares the mess out of me.
There's already places like the airport who won't take cash from me.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I mean, you go to...
Trust me, my mom called me. She's like, can you believe they won't take cash? I was like, yeah. She's like, it's legal tender. It's illegal. And I was like, yeah, I kind of see your point too. Like, I just don't...
I mean, I've read that, a U.S. stamp, the stamps that they sell at the U.S. Postal Service, those are legal tender as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
you can literally exchange those for money.
Yeah.
Or services.
Interesting.
Yeah, because, and what's great about them is that every time that the Postal Service raises the rates, if you have first class stamps from 15 years ago that were, potentially
That's
38 cents. Yeah, now they're...
If you think about it, it's representing legal tender that you paid for that postage that you're sending. So,
and the value of those goes up.
That's
so
interesting. I didn't
so
know
put your money in. Put your money in stamps.
do not put your money in stamps.
Yeah, you don't mail a whole lot of stuff.
No. Well, and before we go, I'm going to ask you some everyday questions that has nothing to do with economics. So you don't like sports? Like, it's not your thing.
It's just not my thing.
You went to the University of South Carolina.
Yes.
You're a Gamecock.
Well, I have to say yes.
Okay. We'll take it. Take that, Trent. I know he's listening.
No, absolutely.
Okay, there we go.
I've been at the games and.
Okay, then there you go. We got a bona fide Gamecock. So I'm also a Demon Deacon. Next, we're gonna ask the you're on a stranded island. You have a working CD player. What music? What artist are you listening? If you're gonna pick one.
Oh gosh, one.
I'll give you two. I'm
a complex monkey, man.
What's your vibe? What are you going with?
Well, the first thing that came into my mind, and it may not be the one to have, is Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh,
absolutely.
Have you been to see Smashing Pumpkins live?
A couple times.
Yeah.
There you go.
Let me say
I've seen them a few times.
I saw them in Charlotte. I think it was just after COVID. No, it was just before COVID started. So that was one of the greatest concerts I've been to, and I've seen Dave Matthews Band probably 15 times.
Can't go wrong with Billy Corgan.
Ben Folds I've seen I don't know, probably 15 times. Bare Naked Ladies, that sort of thing. So I'm a child of 90s alternative. Even now, like Ben Folds released an album like a month and a half ago, and I've listened to it enough times that I can probably sing it without any assistance.
Well, I'm a Coheed and Cambria fan. I'm a child of the early 2000s prog rock.
Right.
So, same kind of question, Desert Island. But you have a working TV and DVD player. What's the show? What's the movie that you're gonna pick? That's what you have.
Movie
and a show.
Oh gosh, probably. Okay, movie wise, I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
Hannibal.
Okay. Oh, great.
The original. Yeah.
And The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh, that's good.
Because of the social content.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on that's
absolutely
right underneath the surface.
Yeah.
So it's the movie, people may not like it, but it's all that other stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's a social commentary is what
absolutely.
it is.
Yeah. Island Dr. Monroe.
He's never asked me these questions before.
No, because you're here.
He probably doesn't want my opinion.
Well, and the last one, you get to pick one car to drive forever. It can be whatever kind of car you want, but you're like, that's what I want.
That's so brutal. Life just doesn't work that way. Okay.
We're doing
for me.
Yeah.
And this is like Selfish Row.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Selfish Row wants a 2005 Aston Martin Vanquish.
Oh.
V12.
Yeah.
It's got swan doors. When you open the doors, they kind of go up so you don't hit the curbs.
Yeah.
So
I always wanted the Aston Martin DB5.
I'll just tell you a quick story. When my father was playing baseball in the Phillies organization, he owned an Aston Martin, and driving somewhere to Atlanta, he was going through the Blue Ridge Mountains or something like that. And I don't know if the story is true or if I'm messing it up somewhere. Drove that Aston Martin right into the side of a mountain.
Oh no!
So yeah, but great car.
I can't remember if they were privy to the Lucas. They called him. It was their electrical system was Lucas King of Darkness.
That's funny.
It's one of those things. British cars, just like BMWs and stuff, are known when they
Notoriously
work. When they work well. When they don't, they do not.
Yeah.
They break.
Yeah. Well, Roe, is there anything you want to, anything else you want to tell us about, as far as, promote State Farm? I assume y'all are doing
I'm
well.
grateful to be here.
Yeah,
and
I'm glad you could come.
If anyone has any needs, glad to talk to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Your website's roeyoung.com.
Yeah, roeyoung.com. And my phone is 803-957-8585.
Perfect.
And one thing we pride ourselves on is if we think we can help you, we will tell you that.
Yeah.
If we think we cannot help you and you're better off doing something else, we will also tell you that.
That's a very honest way.
So-
An objective opinion and assessment.
Right, because we want to help people, not hurt them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, this conversation has been fantastic, and,
I love it,
honestly, I think having you back at some point, especially, from a non-political aspect of knowledge about the economy and things like that. Because one of the things that I saw this morning was they were talking about jobs numbers. There's been 13 some odd million jobs created under Biden. They talk about the fact that the reason I asked about the economy in the United States was because they said that there was more growth in the last quarter than they expected. They talk about that being a point that the president gets to tout, but I've always operated under the sense that the president's not directly responsible for the economy.
You're correct.
Or the gas price.
You're absolutely correct.
You're
absolutely
correct. So I always count when I hear that the economy is doing well, I don't look at that as a trophy for the president or whatever party is in power at the time. I look at that as, well, that to me says that people feel comfortable spending money.
Consumer habits in the end of the day.
It's that's how our market works, and so I'm thankful to hear you basically say that in a more intelligent way. But it's helpful for people to know that you can't just say, well, my president did this and my president did that, or your president ruined this or ruined that.
They were only in the room when it was going on.
Yeah,
right. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
In a large way.
Yeah. I think for the most part that is always something. So ultimately, if this has anything to do with politics, is don't assume that someone is going to do a good job or a bad job for your economy. Ultimately, I'm going to say do a good job where you work, and you'll be rewarded, hopefully, for the work you do.
Yeah.
And I do suspect we will have a recession at the end of the year or the beginning of next year, probably.
Yeah. Just because that's the pattern that we see.
Well, there's a lot going on, a lot of indicators.
Okay.
And I know I can't keep running my mouth.
Oh, no, please. No.
So there are a number of indicators. One is the relationship between employment in the private sector, number-wise, and with the relationship of the government employees. And before every recession, there has been a much lower number in the private sector, a change, and relative to what the government's doing. And what it is that you see the government growing, but the private sector is shrinking a little bit.
Sure.
And remember, with employment, a lot of the numbers are coming from the fact that the labor participation rate is so low.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of things to consider. Just because there's a low unemployment rate doesn't mean you have to put it in context.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can tell you from the aspect of the company I work for, they forecasted for themselves I guess a downturn in revenue. And they made the decision that they were going to go ahead and eliminate some of the jobs that were technically what we call on the bench. Those are employees that are employed, but they're not working on a project that brings in revenue. Okay. So they made the decision to cut a percentage of those employees. And then even in reading articles about what happened, most of the economic papers and news articles that came out said that my company was extremely intelligent for doing this early, because what they've done is they set themselves up for success, because when the downturn happens, especially in the tech industry, that it is going to happen, that they've already set themselves up to have the revenue built back into it so that it won't affect our ability to have the resources we need for increased revenue. And they said, Google's already done it. Facebook's already done it. There are several tech industry companies.
Elon Musk did it for X.
Yeah. Oh Lord. Yeah. I don't know that there's anybody that works for X. I get the impression that that's just a whole. That's basically the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
is what it is. But so fortunately I was not affected by it. So. This has all been extremely interesting, and Roe, absolutely,
and you have a voice for podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. You ought to.
Oh, you're awful.
You ought to do a show. No, seriously, you ought to do a show.
You could do it from home on your computer. Just buy a nice mic and cut it up. Bear will cut it for you.
I'll edit the whole thing. I'll do it for you. I honestly, I think people would listen. I think it's extremely interesting, and you're
awful kind.
No,
we're telling you the truth. There's a lot of people who come in here. I don't go, you should start a podcast, but you have the information and the talent.
We've had people in here that have started podcasts, and I go, there's no way anybody's going to listen to that. But
and that's what he said to me when I got here.
All right, Roe, thank you very much for getting it. Roe.com, or RoeYoung.com. You can check that out. Again, the phone number is 803-957-8585. I know that because I've called it free on several occasions. So thank you very much for being in here, Roe. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
That is going to do it for episode number 168 of the All About Nothing podcast. Thank you, Zach King. Thank you, Roe Young, for being here. And also links to all of our past episodes, podcast platforms, merchandise, and social merchandise media are available on our website, theallaboutnothing.com. And if you think our financial model of giving away free content and entertainment is silly and you're in the giving mood, why not become an official Nothinger and support the show? Visit
$3 an episode.
Visit theallaboutnothing.com and click on the support link near the top of the page. You can subscribe monthly to varying levels of membership tiers and click on the tips link if you just want to give a one-time donation. And if you'd like to, you can join the conversation by joining our Discord channel by clicking on the banner at the top of the webpage. Please subscribe to the show, like and follow on Facebook and Twitter, and share with your family and friends. Thank you very much for listening, and as always, be safe. And
before we go, we're going to be at Soda City Comic-Con.
We'll talk about that real quick. I'm
so excited.
Yeah, so
Bro, you have to come.
Yeah, Soda City Comic Con, August 19th and 20th at the Metropolitan Convention Center, Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center.
Yeah.
Tickets are on sale. Go to our webpage. There are links to buy tickets as well as see other information. We actually just recently found out I'm going to be hosting a panel specifically on podcasting,
and I will be selling $1 tomatoes to throw.
That's very kind of you. I can only imagine what $1 tomatoes would feel like in the face.
No, but we get to talk to people like Sean Astin, Michael Biehn, the original Kyle Reese from Terminator. I know you've seen Terminator, the man who wears the bum
Have you seen Tombstone?
Oh my God!
Michael Biehn played Johnny Ringo.
Ringo.
Oh, so he's going to be there. Summer Glau is going to be there.
Summer Glau, Firefly, Serenity, Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Yeah, the Terminator Sarah Chronicles.
Half of the Hardy Boys. I don't know which Hardy brother is going to be there, but half of them.
Well, and then we just found out that Lex Luger is going to be there.
Lex Luger is going to be there from wrestling.
Yeah,
fun.
We're
going to have a lot of fun. We'll be directly across from the WLTX booth.
Yep.
Which is, what great company to
We're gonna be interviewing.
We're adjacent to the 501st Legion.
I'm glad you brought this up because it didn't occur to me that literally this episode drops and then we're at Soda City Comic Con.
Oh yeah, it's a good primer.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
So theallaboutnothing.com. Find tickets. You can get more information by checking that out. So do that because ultimately at some point Brock is going to come to me and be like, how many tickets did we sell from your website?
And all of the anime actors that are going to be there. I wish I was more well versed, but there's Dragon Ball Z, there's Demon Slayer,
One Piece,
Attack on Titan, One Piece. If you have seen the anime, someone from that anime is going to be there.
Zach is basically going to be in a constant state of orgasm from a result of this.
I'm literally going to be running around. I don't even know if I'm going to give Trent a chance with the microphone.
I'm just going to give you a recorder.
Yeah,
you're just going to run around and talk to people.
Hey, catch this!
But we plan on being able to interview the Beans and the Summer Glaus and Sean Astin's from. I won't say what movie because I think the writer's strike prevents them from promoting that, or the actor's strike. So check it out. So again, You all stay safe and
have a week.
The All About Nothing podcast is produced and engineered by me, Bear Gruber, and recorded from the podcast studio at GOT Sound Studio in Lexington, South Carolina. GOT Sound Studio is owned and operated by Neek the Geek. Visit gotsoundstudio.com for details on studio rental, production, and engineering. Thanks to Cake for our intro music, Sick of You. You can follow everything Cake the band at cakemusic.com. Thanks to Muff the producer for our outro music. You can follow Muff on Instagram at Muff the producer. Thanks to Trent Clark, aka DJ Lonzo. Join him weekly at the venue in Columbia, South Carolina for the Saturday All-Star Drag Brunch and Sundays at the Review Drag Brunch. You can also contact Trent for all your entertainment needs. Trent at theallaboutnothing.com and on Instagram, TheRealDJLonzo. You can also phone him, 803-262-7982. Thanks to Zach King. You can follow him on Instagram at KingZach07 and on Twitter at CarolinaKing21. I am Barrett Gruber. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Barrett Gruber or visit my Linktree/Barrett Gruber. Want to support the show? Visit our page, theallaboutnothing.com, and become a member. There are several tiers available, including memberships that give you early access to episodes as well as exclusive content. Visit theallaboutnothing.com. To find links to our social media, merchandise, and past episodes, as well as other details, visit theallaboutnothing.com. If you'd like to be heard on the show, you can call and leave us a message. Dial 803-672-0533. If the time between these episodes is more than you can handle, check out our partner podcasts. Zach and I host What the Pod Was That with Carrie Simmons. Visit whatthepodwasthat.com for links and details. Ami takes a deep dive down the rabbit hole in episodes of Welcome to Wonderland. Available on all of your podcast platforms. As well, you should check out DJ Lonzo's Top 5. Available on all of the podcast listening platforms. Please subscribe and share the show. If you're on YouTube, please like and hit the notification bell. The All About Nothing podcast is a product of Bear Gruber Entertainment and Media. Thank you for listening.